We are so excited you guys are here this morning. I'm going to pray for us. But would you pray this prayer just silently, maybe 30 seconds, that the reality of who God is, that reality would just explode in your experience this morning? Nothing that we can do special other than sing about Him as He's revealed Himself to us. And man, we come from so many different spectrums here this morning. I'm just praying that God will do something great in our lives. And I believe that if the reality of who He is really takes root in our hearts, if we can grasp who He is and what He wants from our lives, I think our lives might look different. So let's just pray silently, and then I will say a prayer, and we'll get going with the teaching this morning. God, we thank You for this morning. God, we thank You that You are, as we have just sung, a faithful God. You're also a God who saw our plot in life, God, and You came and sent Jesus to rescue us. And God, every single one of us, including myself, God, we all are broken in some way, and we need, God, we're desperate to be rescued by You. God, I pray that this will be another great step in what You are trying to create through Epic Church in San Francisco. God, I pray that the reality of who You are and the reality of what You want to do in our lives, that would literally just explode in our hearts this morning, God, that it would give us hope, that it would give us a great sense of purpose and mission, and it would give us something to share with the world around us. We love You. God, I pray You speak now. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. You guys can be seated. How's everybody doing this morning? How do you like the terrace feel up here? A little different, huh? So basically what's going on is we have a contract with the W, and sometimes we'll be in this space, sometimes we'll be on the third floor. And so we'll make sure to get the word out every time we get a chance to do that. Does this air conditioning unit sound loud just to me or everyone? Alright, I was just making sure I wasn't alone. It's good to have friends. A couple things I want to let you know of. First of all, our last previous service 2 weeks from this morning. So January 30th, 11 o'clock, will actually be in this space. Our last previous service. That night, you'll see on your program there an advertisement for the Epic Vision Night. That night at 6 o'clock at the 19th floor of Avalon Phase 1 at 255 King Street, we're going to have a Vision Night. It's going to include a nice dinner, and we're going to cover that for you. And we're going to share the vision for 2011. As you guys know, in any organization, company, family, the first year of an organization's life or of a human being's life is really crucial, isn't it? And so 2011, the first year for Epic to have a foundation in San Francisco is huge. And so we want to invite you to be a part of that. It's going to be covered. And then 4 weeks from this morning, February the 13th, we launched weekly services. So the grand opening of Epic Church will be on the third floor that day. The grand opening of Epic Church, meaning that's the day that we go to weekly services, will be February the 13th. How many of you have ever gotten into a job and through the interview process you thought it was going to be the perfect job? Come on, they wined and dined you. They let you know the great ideas about the company. They let you know why it was going to be so incredible, and they paid for everything. And they said, yeah, the last person in your job, they went to be a CEO of somewhere really important, and they're just feeding you that. And you tell your friends, I think I found the perfect job. Most of my questions are not going to be rhetorical this morning, all right? With me? You have a part. I'll do the majority, like 95%, but you'll have to carry the other 5%. So I found the perfect job. Or better yet, think about relationships that you got into in the past. You go on those first couple of dates and they wear their nicest clothes, right? And they take you to the nicest place. And ladies, he opens the door for you the first 3 nights. You know this guy? And you tell your girlfriends what? I found the perfect guy. And guys, you find a girl that actually thinks your sense of humor is funny. Right? And she's great, but you can also take her home and the family will think she's great too. Right? We've all had the other kind, right? Yeah, mom, I'm not dating anybody. Everything's cool. And we get into situations and we think we found the ideal scenario, right? We say things like, I've got the perfect job, and I hope that you feel that way. But oftentimes, as we get further into a relationship, as we get further into a job, we realize that what? It's not so perfect's the word we're going, okay? Until I change speeds on you, we're going perfect. So we realize that it's not so perfect. Thank you. You guys are harder than my 3 kids who are small. You know, like, give me something here. This air conditioning unit's not a great pal. So I need something from the crowd. Well, what I want to say is we start up this church, and I know this is going to be a huge letdown. We are not going to be the perfect church. We're going to script this for the crowd next time. It's going to be right here, your part, my part. We're going to go for it. So we are not going to be the perfect church. There are going to be people in here that are going to annoy you at times. Right? There are going to be people, a part of Epic Church, that are not going to be as smart as you are. And depending on your arrogance level, you're like, I don't think any of them are, right? There are also going to be people in this room and a part of this church who are smarter than you. There are going to be people who like foods that you don't like and don't like foods that you can't imagine they would not like. There are going to be people at Epic Church that are not going to vote the same way that you do every time the election comes up. Right? Brad is going to play a song one time and it's not going to be your favorite. I'm going to tell a story that's supposed to be really, really funny, and you're not going to laugh. This is bad. Yeah. Seriously though, I do want to say what we want to be as a church for all people. We want to be a church for all people who are broken, and if you don't know that, that includes every single one of us. Your thing may be different than mine, the place where you're broken and not kind of living the life that God intended you to live. It probably looks different from me and other people around you, but every single one of us are broken. So what we want to be is not a perfect church, because that's not reachable. But what we do want to be is a church that is a strong church in the city of San Francisco, making a great impact throughout our city. And we think, and you guys know this, if you can make an impact in this city, the chances are great that you'll make an impact in the world. Right? And some of you are doing that on a daily basis with your job, with things like technology and fashion and finance. We believe the same thing can happen here through Epic Church. And that's our big prayer, is that what happens in San Francisco really could ignite a movement that's part of God's mission in the world. And so what I want to do this morning is ask the question, if we're going to be that kind of church, a church where anybody, regardless of their race, regardless of their age, regardless of how they vote or the foods that they like or any of those kinds of things, if we're going to be a church like that impacts San Francisco, what will it mean for our lives? And to answer that question, I'm going to open our Bibles to Matthew chapter 18. If you did bring a Bible with you, we've got one for you. Raise your hand if you need one. And if you don't own a Bible or don't own this version and you want it, this is our gift to you. Anybody else need one? We've got a lot more hands, but we're coming to you as quickly as we can. And if you don't have a Bible at home or you like this particular one, it's the English Standard Version we use here. We've got some hands right up here at the front. Just take that home with you. We continue to order more of these, and it's a great reason to have to tell my staff to order some more of these this week. Matthew is in the New Testament, so that's the second half of the Bibles that you were just given. Or if you have an iPhone or a BlackBerry, the ESV app is there. It's free. Feel free to download it right now if you want to. That's what I have on my phone. And so check that out on your phone, your computer, your iPad, whatever you enjoy reading on. Matthew chapter 18, so it's the first book of the New Testament, meaning that it starts really kind of about almost 2/3 of the way back. The Old Testament's the bigger of the two. And so Matthew, and we're going to be in chapter 18 in just a moment here. I want to let you know what's going on before we get into our story and our main text for this morning in Matthew chapter 18. We'll start in verse 23, but here's what's happening before that. Jesus had 12 disciples, and what's just happened, Peter, one of his 12 disciples, and not just one of his 12 disciples, Peter was really one of his closest friends. So you have 12 disciples with Jesus, and then you have 3 guys, Peter, James, and John, And they lived life in even closer proximity to Jesus than the other disciples do. And so Peter asks Jesus a question. He says, Jesus, how often must I forgive my brother? He's talking about his friends. How often must I forgive my friends? As many as 7 times? Peter was a great, upstanding guy, right? He's asking Jesus, he's going, and do I have to do it as many as 7 times? Anybody need forgiveness from you more than 7 times in a day? In an hour? So Peter says that, and Jesus says to him, not 7 times. One of 2 ways to translate it. It's either 77 times or it's 70 times 7 times. And so what Jesus is going to tell his disciples is what the Bible refers to as a parable. Jesus would tell parables oftentimes, and he would do so basically telling a story to illustrate or point to a spiritual reality. Okay? So when you see all throughout the New Testament, especially if you've got like a red letter Bible, those are Jesus' words, and he's constantly telling stories to point towards a spiritual reality. So that's what he's doing here. So let's pick it up in verse 23 of Matthew chapter 18. Here's what Jesus says as he begins to tell the story. He says, "Therefore the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his servants. When he began to settle, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents. And since he could not pay, his master ordered him to be sold, with his wife and children and all that he had, and payment to be made. So the servant fell on his knees, imploring him, 'Have patience with me, and I will pay you everything.' And out of pity for him, the master of that servant released him and forgave him the debt. But when that same servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. And seizing him, he began to choke him, saying, 'Pay what you owe.' So his fellow servant fell down and pleaded with him, 'Have patience with me, and I will pay you.' He refused and went and put him in prison until he should pay the debt. When his fellow servants saw what had taken place, they were greatly distressed, and they went and reported to their master all that had taken place. Then his master summoned him and said to him, 'You wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you pleaded with me. And should not you have had mercy on your fellow servant, as I had mercy on you?' And in anger his master delivered him to the jailers until he should pay all his debt. And Jesus finishes the story by saying, 'So also my heavenly Father will do to every one of you if you do not forgive your brother from your heart.'" If we are going to be a diverse group of people who live in close proximity to each other and seek to make a positive impact on our city, it's going to take plenty of mercy. It's going to take a lot of mercy. And in this parable, Jesus packs tons of realities. And so what I want to do is I want to look at a segment or a scene from the parable, and then I want us to look at what is the reality for us, okay? And so 5 kind of ideas that show up in the parable. And I want to take each of those ideas and correspond it to what is the reality for you and I, and for us as a church as we seek to move forward together. The first thing you see in the parable is this. The servant owes the king a huge amount of money. You see on there, look at verse 24. We'll have these verses on the screen if you don't want to keep looking down. It says, "When he, the king, began to settle, one servant was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents." That would be great if you knew what 10,000 talents equal, right? I'm going to tell you. 1 talent, back in this day and age, in this culture, 1 talent equaled 20 years of wages. Starting to do the math yet. 20 years of wages. And the servant owes the king not 1 set of 20 years of wages. He owes the king 10,000 years. So 10,000, 20 years wages. Do the math real quick. Again, not rhetorical. How many years of wages does the servant owe the king, class? How many? Remember, I got this thing over here. 200,000 years of your salary. Now do the math for you personally. Let's figure out what what your debt is if you're the servant. Get your salary. Some of you are going to need calculators. Some of us are just going to still need our fingers. Get your salary in your mind and multiply that times 200,000. How are you liking that debt ratio now? Now remember, they got paid less than you get paid equivalently today, and so everything I've read from different commentaries say that this is equal to about $12 billion or so dollars. So just keep this in mind. The servant owes the king a huge amount of money. It shows up in the story. Here's the reality for us. We owe God in a major way because of our sin. The servant owes the king $12 million, 200,000 years of his salary. The reality that Jesus is trying to bring out for you and I is that because of our sin, see, God is holy and we aren't. God is perfect, and like I said before, me, not so much. God has created a way in which He wants us to live, and at different times, every single one of us in this room, we've chosen to be our own God and do our own thing, right? Remember, the first step in therapy is that all of us admit we've all chosen to do our own thing. And so the reality that Jesus is saying is that, hey, guess what? This servant, he owed the king a ton of money. And just like the servant owed the king, we owe God because of our sinful ways. God's holy. He demands a way to live. And every one of us, we've chosen to go our own way. The second thing that shows up in the parable is that the servant couldn't pay his debt. Could you pay your debt if it was 200,000 years of your salary? Anybody got that kind of cash? All right, I got a great church looking to make a mission happen. Thanks for laughing. I'll tell you how serious I am about that later. The servant could not pay the debt he owed the king. Right? You see that? In verse 25, if you'll bring that up on the screen. And since he could not pay, his master ordered him to be sold. Not just him, but his wife and children. The servant did not have the resources to pay the king. Right? If someone came to me and said that I owe $12 million, I do not have the resources to pay that. The servant does not have at his disposal a means by which he can pay off the debt that he owes the king. You and I can't pay our debt either. So the first thing, reality, was that we owe God in a major way because of our sin. The second thing is that you and I, just like the servant can't pay the king off, there's nothing you and I can do of our own means or strength to pay God off. Let me tell you a few ways we try to do that. One way is by our wealth, right? There are churches, especially that would rise up a couple hundred years ago throughout the world, churches would sell indulgences. So basically what you could do is go be as bad as you want it to be, and as long as you have the cash flow, you can literally pay your own sin off. Some of you are like, that would be great. You can't be wealthy enough to pay your debt off to God. You also can't be smart enough to pay it off. I think the collective IQ in here is fairly high, especially if you take the speaker away. I think the IQ in here collectively is really, really high, and a lot of wisdom in here. And I pray that God has made you really smart and that you're using it for His purposes and for good in the world. But regardless of how much wisdom you have, you can't be smart enough to figure out a way to pay God for the debt that you owe. Nor can you be good enough. Now, it's probably not going to happen, as I look at the crowd this morning, it's probably not going to happen with any of us, but let's say that you could be the most moral person to ever have lived. Anybody got that aim in life? Even if you became the most moral person to ever have lived, you would not be good enough to pay God off for what you owe. Lastly, you can't be religious enough to pay God off. I want you, if you just got a Bible for the first time, that is our gift to you. We want you to take it home and read it. If you own a Bible at your home, we believe that God has revealed Himself, His character, the life of Jesus, how we are to respond to Him through the Bible. But if you read the Bible for 2 hours every day, and if you never miss a service at Epic Church, you still will not be religious enough to pay off your debt. Let's keep moving through the parable. The third thing I see in the parable is because of His compassion, the king shows mercy and forgives the servant's entire debt. Look at verse 26. 26, you got the servant. He is literally, he's on his knees and he's imploring. So just imagine the humility that takes, or the humiliation. He's on his knees looking at the king, and he says to him, "Have patience with me, and I will pay you every fee." 27 says, "Out of pity for him, the master of that servant released him and forgave him the debt." So out of the king's compassion, he exhibits mercy and pity upon the servant who can't pay. Now, let me ask you this. Did the servant ask that his debt be taken away? He just wanted more time, right? He says, "Be patient with me. Give me some space. Give me some time." Maybe there's family members he could call. He's asking just to get more time so he can still pay off the debt. But the king goes a step further, doesn't he? He doesn't extend his deadline. He completely wipes the slate clean, shows mercy and compassion, and forgives him wholly. The reality is, because of God's compassion, he shows mercy to us and forgives our entire debt to him. I don't want you to miss the realities that are showing up in this great story that Jesus is telling. Because of God's compassion, so you have the king. He's a very compassionate man. The servant says, "Give me some time." And the king says, "You don't need any more time. I'm going to, out of mercy." He doesn't cut his debt in half. Right? You hear all those, if you call us and give us a lot of money, we'll reduce your debt with a credit card. Hope you don't work for those people or fall into that because I'm about to bust you. I'm not sure that's a great plan. But the king is not doing that here. He's not saying, "Hey, we'll work out a payment plan over the next 20 years. The king forgives the debt completely. Some of us, because we have a skewed view of who God really is and what he's really like, we try to figure out ways to pay him off, don't we? Give me another chance and I won't screw it up again. Give me a chance to make this right. Let me promise, let me go to church, let me go to the temple, let me go to the cathedral, let me do something." And what's beautiful, if you don't get anything from this morning, get this mix, like focus in right here for the minute. What's beautiful is that God doesn't go, "Hey, work harder, make it happen, give me everything you've got, show me what you can give me." Because of the cross that we sang about earlier, that Jesus was bruised and crushed on, paying the penalty for my sin and for your sin, what God does is forgive us entirely. Just as the king stopped the servant with his plan, God stops the plan we have to pay him off and says, "You know what? I'm not going to let you do that. In fact, you can't do that, but I'm going to do it for you." I want to share a couple of verses from Luke chapter 23. And we'll have them on the screen. So what's going on in Luke 23 is Jesus is on the cross and he's in the middle of being crucified. And I want you to focus on that moment because it's not Jesus looking back in the past, reflecting on the crucifixion. He's being crucified when we're going to read what we're going to read. He's being crucified right now. Here's what it says in Luke. It says, "And when they came to the place that is called the Skull, there they crucified him and the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. And Jesus said, 'Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.' And they cast lots to divide his garments." I want to reiterate this. Jesus is not 2 years down the road past his crucifixion. He's not looking back and going, "Man, God, I've had enough time to get over this. Would you forgive those wicked people?" Jesus is hanging on a cross, and in that moment, in a present tense kind of way, he's going, "Father, forgive them. Father, forgive them." In this moment, these evil men, he's got a criminal on his right dying for what he deserves to die for. He's got a criminal on his left dying for the punishment, that's the punishment he deserves. And there he is in the middle, being punished for something he didn't do. And in that moment, he's going, "Here's mercy. God, would you invoke a heart of compassion on these people and forgive them even as they are crucifying me right now." Ephesians chapter 2, verses 4 and 5 talk about the extent of God's mercy. Paul, the author of this book, he says, "But God, being rich in mercy, because of the great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses," that's our sins, "made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved." I want you to get a heart of understanding for the kind of heart of mercy God has and has displayed towards us. longer dead in your sins because he's rich in mercy. He gives grace, he gives love, he forgives us. But the next thing in the parable is this: what this man is owed by the other servant is minuscule compared to what he owes the king. Look with me at verse 28. But when that same servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. And seizing him, he began to choke him, saying, "Pay what you owe." Now, a denarius was equal to 1 day's wage. And so, 100 denarii, that's equal to 100 days' wages. But again, they weren't paid the equivalent of what we are paid today. And so, everything that I've read indicates that this is equal to 15 bucks. Okay? So, if you understand the great ends of the spectrum and extremes that Jesus is throwing out there, the servant was forgiven equal to how many dollars? Remember? $12 million. He gets mercy, right? He gets his entire debt swept away. It's forgiven. It's dismissed. Another one of his servants owes him $15. Now surely he's going to be compassionate, right? He's not just asking for the money. Do you see how he's asking for it? He's seizing the man. He's choking the guy that owes him $15. Before you do that, come ask the church. We will give you 15 bucks. All right? Before it leads to this. He's choking the man and he's saying, "Pay what you owe." There's a disconnect somewhere, right? But Jesus is sharing this story because he wants you to get the big implication of what he's saying. It's like, man, you've been forgiven $12 million and you are with this guy, what you're doing is you're showing judgment. You're not withholding it for $15. So what this man is owed by the other servant is minuscule compared to what he owes the king. Here's the reality for us. Usually what others owe us is minuscule compared to what we owe God due to our sin. So what we want to do is we don't physically, hopefully, choke people, but we do put them in our little prison, right? We do want them to know that they're indebted to us, and until they can make that right, no mercy. We do the same thing now. What I'm not doing is saying, "Hey, I want you to overlook people offending you." It's impossible, isn't it? And I'm not saying that there aren't people out there, especially who commit acts of crime, that they don't deserve to receive the consequence of their action. But man, when you and I begin to think as this servant should have, in light of all that God's done for us, how in the world can we really withhold mercy for things that are much smaller in comparison to people do to us? How can we do that? Look at verse 29. His fellow servant fell down and pleaded with him, "Have patience with me." So interesting. He's asking for the same thing. Here's the fifth idea in the parable. The servant didn't want to get what he deserved, but he wanted everyone else to get what they deserved. Right? Look at 29 again. But let's compare verse 26 and 29. In verse 26, the servant owes the king, but listen to what this same servant says. In verse 26, he gets on his knees and he says, "Have patience with me and I will pay you everything." Verse 29, there's another servant talking, but what does he say? The exact same thing. Look at 26 and then look at 29. 29 says, his fellow servant falls down on his knees. He pleads with this servant, "Have patience with me and I will pay you." They make the same request, don't they? But the responses could be further apart, could they? So the guy, he owes $12 million and he's going to the king, "Would you please have patience? Don't sell me. Don't sell my kids. Don't sell my wife. Have patience with me. Forgive me. Let me pay you back." And the king relents. And instead of wanting justice, the king wants mercy to triumph over justice. And all of a sudden, just 3 verses later, the same guy is getting the same quote, except now he's receiving it, right? So he's got a person kneeling down before him, owes him the equivalent of $15. And this guy says, have mercy on me and I will pay you. The response in verse 30, the servant refuses and he goes and puts him into prison until he should pay the debt. Verse 33 really gets to the big idea of this entire parable. Verse 33, this is the king talking to this servant, but it also represents God speaking to us. It says, "And should not you have had mercy on your fellow servant, as I had mercy on you?" So the servant didn't want to get what he deserved, but he wanted everyone else to get what they deserved. The reality for us is that sometimes we're the exact same way. We love mercy when we're the one who's offended, right? Can we just be honest? Don't you love someone to show you mercy when you're the offending party? But when the shoe's on the other foot, when the roles are reversed, it's like, I'm not going to let them off the hook. Why is it so difficult for us to do what seems so obvious? Why is it so difficult for us, those of us that have received mercy, why is it so difficult for us to show it? One of two reasons. I want you to see them before we close this morning. I think there's really one of two big reasons. The first one is this. It could be that we don't get the depths of our own sin. It could be that we don't get the depths of our own sin, meaning we don't understand that God is holy and that we've chosen to live life our own way. We've chosen to be our own God, so we just don't understand how big the rebellion has been between us and Him. Or it could be option two, and it's this. It could be that we don't get and understand the depths of His grace. If you're a person who longs for mercy, but refuses to show mercy to others, I really believe for all of us at times it's one of these two. Either we don't get the depths of how we've offended God, or we don't get the depths of God's grace and mercy and love towards us. Which is more likely for you? And that is rhetorical before you answer out loud and confess. Which is more likely for you? Here's how you can know. If you go on living your life, and you really have the attitude that because God's a loving God, I'm going to live how I want to, and that's going to be perfectly cool with Him. And the reality for you and I in those situations is that we don't get the depths of our own sin and the holiness of God. However, if you're a person, because of what you've done, you live life every day hopeless because of the mistakes you've made, because if we knew your past, we wouldn't show you mercy either, all those things, if that's you, then what you don't get and understand is the depth of God's grace. Which is more likely for you? Is it that you live life how you want to and it doesn't matter? Or is it because you've screwed up so much, there's nothing left for you? And I want to explain, the best way for us to live is with the reality of both of these. That, man, God is a holy God, we are sinful people. But yet His grace, as we read earlier in Ephesians, it takes us from death to life. It takes us from hopeless to hope. It takes us from guilty to righteous. And as we wrap up this morning, I want to say this to those of you that are considering being a part of this church as we move forward. I want us to be people who are here for everyone. I want us to be people that, regardless of ethnicity or interest, that God's grace can transform any of us. But in order for us to do that, we're going to have to be people who are merciful to one another. We're all broken. We all have our own issues. And here's the choice we get to make. See, if we choose not to live in close proximity with others, then life feels really safe that way sometimes, right? We've been hurt before. We don't want to be hurt again. You know, if you get close to people, there's all kind of issues there. You're right. The closer you get to people, the more messier, the messier life can be. But also, I think that's the only way that life can be beautiful. Otherwise, you stay at a distance, play it safe, and then what? You have no one to share life with. You have no one to celebrate with. You have no one to mourn with. You have no one to share beautiful days like yesterday with. And so really, you gotta decide which one's going to be more costly. Is it going to be more costly to live life alone and stay at a distance so you don't have to be a merciful person? Or is it going to be more costly to get involved in the lives of people as we move forward here, realizing that the closer you get to me and the closer I get to you, the more we're likely to offend one another. But also the closer you get to each other and the closer we get to each other, the more likely consider the mission of our church in San Francisco, people want to know, does God exist? And if he does exist, what is he like? The Bible's really clear that you and I get to represent him in this city. Other places refers to us as his ambassadors. And so what if people quit getting what they deserved and began receiving unexpected and unmerited mercy and grace? Perhaps they'd get a glimpse of what God's like. And as we close this morning, some of you in this room have never experienced the mercy of God. You've got a past that if we were to talk, you would just be like, there's no way, I've done too much. For you, I just want to say that you've been invited by the mercy of God to experience that this morning. Believing that what Jesus did for you paved the way for you to go from guilty to pardon, for you to go from death, as the Bible says earlier, to life. And the rest of us, who are the people, probably the ones that get on your nerves the most, who are the people this week and moving forward, who are the people that need to get mercy from you? You guys just pray with me as you consider those things. Who are the people that you know they're going to disagree with you this week? Your employees are going to let you down. You're thinking of an employer who is going to let you down. If you're married or involved in a relationship or even friendship, there are people this week that are going to let you down. My advice would be to decide ahead of time that you are going to be merciful to it. Not overlooking the offense, but you're going to be merciful to it. God, would you help us as we are people who so desperately need to receive your mercy? God, would you in turn make us people who display your mercy to the people around us? And God, for Epic Church, as we move forward, we're going to have to be merciful people if we're going to live out the vision you have for our church. God, I pray that you'll use things like our next preview service and our launch team and our vision night to really bring us close together. God, build community among us. And God, may we represent you well in our city on a daily basis. Ask these things in Jesus' name.